Good morning, dreamers. These are the real glasses. These are the glasses that give a break to my eyeballs from their contacts. And because I'm wearing them today, I thought it was very appropriate to talk to you about vision. Yesterday, I listened to a podcast about how we view people. And it was a follow-up on an earlier podcast about contempt. You see, there's this evil from the world that has seeped into the church. And it is an evil that the world is trying to rectify. But in many places, the church is still falling behind. And it's the theology of contempt. And I can give you the podcast information if you directly message me, and I can share that with you. But basically, the first one was that this exists in the church, and this is why there are people on the margins and why there are people left out, and why certain sins are made to be bigger than others, more drastic results for them, whereas other sins are swept under the rug and pretty much neglected, and how some whole people groups are seen as less than. And traditionally in the church, as you know from my poem moment, traditionally color has been something that has been used to lessen someone. Nowadays, it's more along the lines of sexual orientation. And we're given lots of code words to call it, and we're not owning it, and we're saying, well, this group of people over here is destined for heaven, and this group of people over here is destined for hell. And we compartmentalize people. And I mean, there's so many denominations. Of course, that's very natural that humans do this to each other. We put others in a lesser place so that we feel we're in a greater place. Well, yesterday's episode was awesome because it was looking at the contempt within our own lives. It was using these examples saying, hey, but what do I do? And that's the way I look at life, is there is this thing out there, but how does that affect me? What am I doing right, or what am I doing wrong? What do I know better and I now need to do better? That's how I live. And that's part of dreaming. Because it's really hard to dream somebody else's dreams, right? You got to dream your dreams. Yes, there's raising children and having dreams for them, but ultimately they have to take over and live their life. And so yesterday's episode was so great because it was talking about how we view people with contempt. They are in a category that we're not in, and therefore they are less than, and we're raising ourselves up in some even unconscious way. Unconscious way, because we don't understand, or we're disgusted, or we don't think, and it's all about what we view. It's not about them. Right? If they're having a working relationship with their creator, that's between them and their creator. Now, there are times when you have to step in and say, hey, because I love you. But when it's a stranger, you haven't built the trust to say those things to them or about them. And picketing with signs is not the way to show Jesus' love. And coming back with all lives matter is not the way to show we recognize that you have been put at the back of the sanctuary. We recognize that we have neglected you. We recognize that we have minimized your voice, and we only learn from white theologians, right? Like, snappy comebacks are not the way to show Jesus' love. He had snappy comebacks, all right, but they weren't for the marginalized. Those smart, snappy comebacks, they were for the religious who thought they were so amazing, which I know I struggle with, even as I dream. So I have to look at my own life and how I view people. And they said the way to counteract this, because it's one thing to point out a wrong, it's another way to point out a right. It's another thing to point out a right. And the way to counteract this is with something called contemplation. When you gaze at someone in contemplation, the idea, and this is why it got me, dreamers, is the idea of this. A dreamy gaze toward the other. Now, that doesn't always mean a romantic puppy love type of gaze, but truly a dreamy gaze, a gaze with room for dreams. And they took you through an exercise of, here's a picture of a stranger, and look at them with a dreamy gaze, and then look at them with a gaze of contempt. And you created two totally different stories in your life, in your mind, within a 5-second period, really. And it's scary how drastically those things can change because of preconceived notions within. And I can give you, like I said, I'll give you the podcast if you're interested, but the concept of how we view others. These are fellow image bearers of God, fellow dreamers. And yet we allow preconceived notions to determine their entire outcome, if you will, in our perspective, in our point of view. And maybe I'm just talking to myself today because maybe none of you look with contempt. I know certainly I don't do so on purpose. And until someone brought it to my mind, I really didn't think I did. Sometimes I can view people with contempt that don't think the way I do, even about church. I know a good teacher named Jonathan Martin, and he said, if you progress beyond what those that taught you have moved, that was their journey, and now you're on your journey. Never look back with contempt because they're the ones that taught you Jesus in the first place. So never look back with contempt, but never look forward or sideways or up or down with contempt either. Put on your Jesus glasses and see the image bearer before you. It changes everything. Have a great Friday, dreamers. I may or may not see you on the weekend. I don't know because I have to help a friend move, but it's going to be fun. Have a wonderful time. And until I see you next, sweet dreams.